truck drivers of Reddit. What is your most NSFW story from the road? I was an OTR driver for the weirdest year of my life. Lot Lizard tried to get into the truck with my husband driving partner while I was in the back sleeping. We had heard you should be nice and park a specific way because otherwise they can unhook your trailer and you'll be ducked when you leave. Watched a large woman in the middle of arguing with the voices in her head have a full psychotic break and scare the it out of a waitress. I have more. I'll be back. Watched a woman driving snort white powder off of a CD case with a kid in a car seat in the back. Tennessee. My old WoW guild had a truck driver in our ranks. He carried a full PC in his truck and connected over wireless at truck stops to raid. We were raiding the day the verdict was released at the last Michael Jackson trial. As we played, he was giving us regular updates of some truckers fighting outside his truck over the verdict. The fight kept escalating. Stuff thrown. Fists used. Knives pulled. Finally he just piped up in voice chat, "Oh it. Gotta go. Fill you in later," and went offline. About 30 minutes later he comes back. Apparently the fighting truckers decided to pull guns on each other. So he decided to GTFO and head inside the stop. Edit. Since this blew up, maybe some old guildmates would see this. Tsug server Garona. For the Horde. Not my story but relayed to me by a former ASPS officer 20 years ago. One fine afternoon, a trooper pulls up to an abandoned car in the bushes along I-17 in Phoenix. It used to lined with decades-old oleander. Upon inspecting the car, the troop finds a headless torso in the driver's seat, hands at 10 and 2 and a perfect hole in the windshield about the size of a head. It looks like the dude's head had leapt off his body and flown through the windshield. The car was in drive, motor off and very little damage. No one witnessed anything and so they had a nice little mystery going on. Days later, a trucker in California who was unloading his load of sewer pipes has a head roll out of one and onto the ground. Evidently, our unlucky driver in Phoenix had rear-ended the pipes, one of which popped through the windshield, taking the dude's head with it. The deceleration made it roll forward in the pipe and without a head, dude just veered right into the bushes, being gradually slowed to a stop by those bushes where the engine idled until it ran out of gas. Story is from my brother. He was at a rest stop once and saw this middle-aged woman in a pink Jeep with 4-5 small dogs, walking them. He continued about his routine and got in his truck and back onto the freeway. A few minutes down the road the Jeep with the woman and her dogs goes flying past him. Then suddenly makes a sharp left turn, hits the dirt median, and barrel rolls. He stops the truck and runs to check on her. There are dead dogs scattered all over. She is laying in a ditch of water with her head just above the water. She kept asking him incessantly if her dogs are okay. They were not. She was not okay either as she could not get up. I saw a Lot Lizard empty her contents by hanging her ass out of a truck window, then move along to the next truck. I am one of the elusive female long-haul drivers. The number of times I have been invited to share a shower with total strangers is disturbing. But the absolute worst I ever heard was in a truck stop in Florida. I got out to fuel, and had been running hard, so I had a bandana on and my hair in pigtails. I finished fueling and jumped in to pull forward to go get my receipt and turned on my truck. Overheard two guys talking about how they were going to grab me by my pigtails and ram me hard from behind. I opted to not stay at that truck stop that night, and went to another one for my shower, laundry and for the night. My father-in-law's dad, grandfather-in-law, was driving through a pretty sketch part of New York in the 70s. He was in Vietnam and not the nicest human. I guess there was an area known for truckers getting robbed due to slow-moving traffic. Just cut your lines and take your it. He was driving through this area and a dude just hopped up on the steps of his cab. So since he was holding his .45, presumably for this reason, shot the dude point blank in the chest and just kept going. Somehow nothing came of it. Pretty insane in my opinion. Used to work as a freight broker. I had one carrier, trucking company, whose dispatcher became somewhat of a good friend from all the work we did together. And frequently he'd assign this one charismatic kinda hillbilly-ish driver on my loads, a nice break from the typically grumpy Eastern European who spoke no English and hated you for calling him. On one of said loads, driver picked up a lot lizard somewhere in the Carolinas. Typically these type of ladies don't spend too long in the cab, but seems driver guy had found himself somewhat of a gem as he started hauling with her in the cab everywhere. Days turned into weeks, into months, and despite how much he'd call her out for being an ugly slut when I was on the phone with him, they seemed like they had a good thing going. TLDR, it gets lonely out there. Get yourself a duck buddy. Didn't drive, but worked in safety for a large OTR company. Our ELG system had a camera option so drivers could take pictures during pre-trips or if they were involved in accidents. Had a driver quit, and when we were getting the truck ready for someone else we discovered he had made the home screen of his ELG tablet a naked picture of someone he had in his truck. It was terrible. The worst part was we could not figure out how to change it back. Work for a 3PL and we had to permanently ban one of our carriers because our customer found the team of drivers gangbanging a lot lizard as they were waiting to be unloaded. Apparently when they got caught, one of the drivers took off across the lot ass naked, never to be seen again. Used to assist in liability claims for trucking companies. What a nightmare. Best NSFW stories involved the multiple times truckers ended up in the back of their trucks trying to score with a lovely lady, who then proceeded to rob them blind and or steal the cab. We had 2 calls in 1 month involving truckers in Texas where the drivers were found naked in the back of their trucks with no wallets or ID at all. Police were calling us to identify them and figure out how to get them back on the road. One guy lost a full load from Circuit City because he thought it was his lucky day. Didn't matter how many times we warned the drivers or told the stories. SFW was the guy who stopped off at home en route to deliver a load. Found his wife with her boyfriend getting cozy. He walked back to the truck, put it in gear and parked it in their living room. No one died, but try to explain to your insurance carrier how this was an accident. My dad's been a truck driver for over 30 years and his story he tells all the time is before the age of cell phones. He was running in the middle of the night and came up on a flipped vehicle. About that time a state trooper pulled up. The trooper and him followed bloody footprints through the desert trying to find the driver. They never found anyone. Another time it was a similar situation, but it was a extended van with a group of people and children. He had to help find the bodies in the dark that had been scattered from the van flipping. A trucker purposely hit my best friend's uncle while he was on a motorcycle. The trucker ran his pockets and took his ID and his plates and left him for dead on the road. Even though he was mangled beyond recognition, he was conscious and he begged the trucker to leave some ID behind so his family wouldn't be left to wonder what happened. The trucker laughed and drove away. Somehow he survived, but he's paralyzed neck down. Oddly, my friend's father is also a trucker. The world's been cruel to that family. A few times I've seen someone receiving roadhead, and once I had a convertible of college-age girls flash me their tits. But the funniest was a guy driving down the road with his topless girlfriend or wife. He was just holding a boob. He wasn't rubbing it, and they weren't doing anything else. He was just driving down the road holding a massive titty. Years ago there was a similar question on here and this truck driver got on and proceeded to tell a tale of him witnessing one truck driver's pet chimp kick the it out of another truck driver's pit bull. I'm just here for the lot lizard stories. Not really NSFW and not my story. But my buddy's girlfriend's parents own a trucking business and one of their drivers never showed to his stop and they couldn't get a hold of his phone, so they looked at the tracker on the truck and he was at a truck stop in California. They called the police there and they went to check it out. He had been robbed and shot in the process while parked overnight. The worst part was that it was his second to last run before he retired. The owners of the company knew him well and felt terrible because he didn't want that job, but they gave it to him anyway. Not a driver, but dispatch. One of the craziest stories we had was that there was a driver driving in the middle of the night and an owl went straight through the windshield. It ended up getting stuck in his chest. He was able to pull over and turn on his hazards. His body was found outside of the truck, which looked like he tried putting the emergency cones out. I passed an accident on I-240 in Memphis a few years ago. My dad was in my passenger seat, and we were in the northbound lanes. In the southbound lane, pressed against the divider, was a white Ford F-150, and about 6 police cars behind it. The Ford was smashed to it. As we got closer to the accident, I noticed a body hanging out of the driver's window, covered in a blanket, the arms stretched out from under the blanket, and blood was smeared along the side of the white truck. It was a miserable scene. My dad was messing with his phone at the time, and he noticed me slow down slightly as we passed the wreck. As he started to look up, I said, "No, don't look, Dad," but it was too late. He saw the body and the blood, and we drove in silence the whole way home. It was a somber experience. Neither of us talked about it ever again. Wear your ducking seatbelts, people. My friend's dad was apparently driving one day and a turkey fell out of a tree, broke through the window, and he was just covered in blood. But he was apparently less than a mile from completing the delivery. Apparently they thought he killed someone before they saw the turkey. Driving northbound in Utah heading to Brigham to deliver a load. Get past Ogden and it just starts downpouring like a Texas storm. It also happens to be 8 p.m. and pitch blackout. Happened to roll by the scene of an accident where a gentleman was hanging out the driver's side window of a 90s Tacoma with a white sheet barely covering him and covered in blood, his head only half attached to his body. The tires of the truck were bald as it and given the pole that the truck was wrapped around. It's obvious what happened. Wear your seatbelt, people, and be safe. I don't want to see another semi-decapitation. Edit, rip inbox. Highest rated comment is about a dead guy. This is nothing NSFW, but it involves a trucker. I remember taking a peek at my uncle's paycheck back in 1993 and that ducker was clearing $2,500 a week. Watched a couple solicit a lizard, have a threesome in the truck. Didn't see that part, but we know when the truck is rocking, and pay her, hug her, and send her on her way. Pulled into a truck stop outside of Sacramento. Real dive. I just wanted some coffee and take a rit. As I'm walking through the lot, I see some sketchy looking homeless guy yelling at truckers demanding money. I decide to avoid the situation. Cut between some trucks and circle around the store. About a minute or two later I hear a gunshot. The homeless guy shot a trucker in the head. 2 other guys tackled him and held him for the police. I always wonder if I hadn't decided to avoid him if that would have been me. Edit to everyone asking. I didn't see the name of the truck stop. It was south of Sac on 99. This happened in the mid-90s. It wasn't a big chain truck stop like Pilot, Petro, or Flying J. Damn. I was totally expecting the homeless guy to be giving a blowjob or something at the end. No, that stuff was so common it's not even memorable. Girls flashing their tits at you. One girl in a big van full of teenagers dropped her shorts and rubbed her nether bits on the back window. Think it was a cheerleading squad. You get the lot, lizard knocking on your window. I watched one girl go through 5 trucks parked in a row without ever touching the ground. Stepped from one truck to the next. Running board to running board. We call girls like that cans of whipped cream. My dad's a truck driver. Called me really upset one morning about 7 years ago saying a girl my age, I was 16 then, was knocking on his window about 5:10 a.m. Barefoot and obviously high. She had little to no teeth and didn't seem to have bathed in weeks. She was begging my dad to let her perform sexual services on him in exchange for like $10 US or something. It made him so upset that he bought her a hot chocolate and a sandwich. Gave her his blanket from his truck and $50 and really hoped she wouldn't use it for drugs. I guess he thought of me when he saw her. I don't know. Really shook him. I had a friend that used to drive trucks in Mexico. He would always keep a gun with him in case of robbers. He said it was the most terrifying job he's ever had. My dad drove truck for the first 18 or so years of my life. I went with him a lot when I was a kid. Most gruesome thing I have ever seen was an accident where a semi hit a cow. Blood and guts ducking everywhere. The truck was pretty much demolished. No horror movie has even come close to as gory as that sight. Saw a guy get door checked by cops and he flew into a chain link fence. one of the cops jumped out of the moving car and started beating his ass. That was not a good part of St. Louis to be parked in overnight. My dad slept in the driver's seat with a Beretta on the dash that night. You'd be surprised how many men and women you see driving down the road in various stages of undress. You don't really notice it when you're in a car, but from a higher vantage point. Yeah. Also, I saw way more masturbating than roadhead. And yes, I learned to curse at an extremely young age. I'm a little late to this party, but this is a pretty interesting story. My mom was a truck driver for a little bit when I was just out of high school. I took a trip with her from Texas to Louisiana. Stopped at a truck stop outside Baton Rouge. We got approached by a prostitute. My mom said she wasn't interested because she wasn't gay. The prostitute said, "I'm both male and female. I have a VND." My mom, being the curious sort she is, asked how that was possible. They said I'm a real hermaphrodite. I was born with a working VND. My mom said she would give them $10 to see. They agreed. This person had a veal opening, testicles, and working D. We ended up talking with them for about 30 minutes about hermaphroditism. It was pretty interesting conversation. I had a lot lizard drop her false teeth on my junk. Really killed the mood. Not a truck driver, but I do know someone who shot at a truck driver while driving down the interstate. The local drivers knew the guy and didn't like him because he would basically just record drivers doing illegal maneuvers and then sell the tapes to the companies. One day he claims that the truck driver saw him and tried running him off the road, so he pulled out a gun and shot right into the cab. He claimed self-defense in court after firing from a moving vehicle, and even tried to get some of my friends to lie in court for him. They didn't, but he ended up doing about a year. About 20 years ago, I was heading down Snowshoe on I-80 in Pennsylvania. Flatbed passed me, and after he got about a 1/4 mile in front of me, the brake lights came on and he started swerving all over. Ended up in the median. Upright but jackknifed into the driver's side. Turns out he hit a bear, which went through the windshield. Bear survived it and went on attack mode. I and 2 other drivers got to him in time to see this bear flipping out inside the cab, attacking the guy. Right behind us was a state trooper. He ran up to the truck, yanked the passenger door open and shot the bear twice. Bear turned around and started towards him and he unloaded into it. That guy was tore the duck up, and no, he didn't make it. Best comment of the day. Happened a while ago. Friends with a guy, let's call him Sam. Helped him come out of his shell. Semi-cured his phobia of going out in public. Cocky sounding, I know, but before he met me, he never left his house unless it was to go to a cosplay convention. Helped him make more friends. Helped him have his first house party. I always paid for my share. Didn't mooch off the free stuff his mother provided. Rich lawyer who was divorced a year prior. She took me aside during a party and hugged me and went to kiss me on the cheek, and I don't know what came over me, but I turned and kissed her. I expected a slap, a gasp, a step back, but no, she teared up and said she wished her husband was even half as decent as I was. Sam asked me to follow her. We end up in her room, and fast forward 30 minutes and she walks out of the bathroom in her bedrobe. Always wore it with a nightgown underneath, so wasn't new. We sit on her bed and talk, and we keep getting closer until her hand is stroking my cheek, and I just go for it. I push her back on the bed and start kissing her from her neck down, and realize she is naked under her robe. In my head I'm telling myself to go slowly. She is probably much more experienced. I bite the side of her hips as I rub her clit while moving down. I go down on her for only a couple of minutes before she vice grips my head in an orgasm lock, rips me up, kisses me, and tells me to fuck her before Sam realizes we are gone. The next 45 minutes are some I'll never forget. Hearing the words "that's the first time that's happened" in a good way from a gorgeous MILF 20 years older made me finish instantly. As she was on top, she buries her head into a pillow, ripped my hair, jumped off me, and I had thought she peed on my chest. Turns out she had her first squirting orgasm. When she told me with that satisfied look on her face, it took one more thrust and I was done. Had a quick shower and joined the party like nothing happened. 2 weeks later she met an author and they hit it off like a house on fire. Much later he proposed, and she thanked me for broadening her horizons. I think my friend found out, because I started getting invited over less and less, and she called me and asked why. To this day, no idea if he found out, or just dogged me once he had all new friends.